It is October 4th, 2025, and if you are listening to this, you are probably listening to episode 28 of Tacit Talk, and we have with us here two folks. We're mostly going to be talking to Aaron, but we might talk to Max as well. I know he's an avid listener of most of the pods, and we were discussing, so let's set the scene, folks. We are at Minnowbrook 2025, also known as the APL Future Implementers? Is that what it's called? Futures? APL, what's the alternative name?
The Implementers Conference.
I don't think that's what's the official name?
APL Futures Conference.
APL Futures Conference. But colloquially known as Minnowbrook. I was here 2 years ago. Aaron was not, Max was not, so this is, I know you've been before though, correct?
Yeah, like three parts back.
Okay. And so this is the final night, final evening. Aaron gave two presentations. Both of them were yesterday, or was it? Yeah. Anyways, you've given two presentations. We were supposed to talk last night, but you were tired, or your voice was a bit tired because of all the talking, and so we said, "All right, we'll try and do it tomorrow." It is now tomorrow, and honestly, this is a gift. It's a gift because I haven't posted to Tacit Talk since March of 2025. So that is, we are 10th? That's 7 months. It's a bit long. I've been busy, folks, but Aaron, the only guest that's spanned all three of my technical podcasts, and not only has he been on ADSP, Arraycast, and Tacit Talk, but also you are still episode 197. For the avid listeners and the avid goers too of the website, you will know that I have a preview podcast that I like. If I want to get people interested, I want it to be a good episode, and I only update it when I have an episode that I think is better than the last one. I think for a long time it was like episode 155, or it was the Star Wars episode where Bryce and I were chatting about the future of C++, and then we replaced that with the Eagle Pub at or on Cambridge University, where Alan Turing frequented, and it's still there, folks. This is not going to supplant it because it's on Tacit Talk. Anyways, enough about the conference. We're going to talk a little bit about Co-dfns. We're going to talk a little bit about, APL, other things. Before we do that, though, maybe give you a review of Minnowbrook. Tell us about times past that you've been here, this time versus your other experiences here, and then we'll hop into Co-dfns and everything we've been chatting about since then. So I'm going to hand the mic to you, and it's all you, buddy.
All right, thanks. Let's see. The last time I was at Minnowbrook, it was I think 3 Minnowbrooks ago, and it was interesting. It was like 2017, something like that.
Might have been one you skipped during the
Yeah. I skipped a couple or something like that, and it was. I think there was a lot more of the old guard there. There was some of the new guard coming in. I remember distinctly one of my best experiences there was the recently passed John McGrew. I gave a scathing talk about the state of fonts in the APL world and attacked it, and John McGrew was heavily involved in a lot of the APL fonts, and he vehemently defended the honor of classic APL fonts, and we had at it a little bit at the talk, and it was great. It was wonderful.
All right. I mean, we were supposed to get an overview of everything, but now we are going to immediately take a digression. Famously, or not well known, is the fact that Minnowbrook is a conference of APL implementers, traditionally. It dates back, I believe, to 1969. Ken Iverson, Roger Huey, Jim Brown, the greats of APL lore used to come here, and now still APL implementers come here, but it's just a different generation. But the talks are not published. I think the program and maybe like the talk titles are, but things that are presented here stay here. It's kind of a open forum for, in the past at least, competitors to talk about different implementation techniques, collaborate, etc. So the point being is, I did not know about this talk that Aaron is referring to, and I would like to know which fonts were you attacking? Was it APL, Unicode 333? Was it 385? Because now typically the ones I use are 386 out of Dialog, and also too there's the WeWa and the tiny APL ones that are all extensions of like the BQN 386. So if you recall, and I imagine you do, give us a little, 1 minute to 5 minutes to 10 minutes if you want overview of what were your complaints with the fonts and what was the outcome of that talk, because I am very interested. I do love a lot of the APL fonts.
Yeah. Sure. So, yeah, I do remember it because I remember coming into the APL world and the symbols were great, but the fonts were not up to par, in my opinion. And this was probably circa 2017.
Which fonts?
So specific, All of them.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
all of
Which
them.
ones are the most
So
egregious?
we had the SAP one. I think we had one from APLX. We had the APL 385s. We had a number of other fonts. A lot of them were slab serifs, and slab serifs are a really interesting font style. But at that time, there was a big movement towards a more modern, low line width aesthetic, and we had nothing for that. And I especially had a bit of a rant against APL 385, which is the dialogue standard font, still is, was then.
Well, technically 386.
386 is a proposed
So
fix,
it
but it's not the official. It's not the official one yet.
You can download it.
You can download it. You can use it. A lot of people are liking it. But
Also, not to interrupt, because I'm not a font aficionado. I know the names and I know how they look like. What is the slab serif? Can you explain what that is and what's the problem with it?
yeah, slab serifs are if you've ever used Courier, that typewriter-esque looking font, that's a slab serif. So it has little serifs, the little decorations on the edge of the characters. Like if you think of Times New Roman, that's a full serif font. Slab serifs generally have very blunt, uniform little decorations on the edges of the fonts. And so IBM's original APL fonts were very carefully designed to fit within that aesthetic, and they were well-designed fonts for the type balls and everything that was supposed to go. But if you're trying to do certain types of modern publishing, the slab serifs just are not the appropriate font for those places. And they hadn't been updated in ages. They didn't take advantage of any modern type technology. And especially APL 385 was intentionally designed to look a little like Comic Sans.
Oh, so I was about to say, is I've heard the lore of APL 385 is that its inspiration was Comic Sans.
Yeah. And if you want to insult a font aficionado, you say, well, let's base our entire font aesthetic on Comic Sans. So I was a little jaded. I was a little up in arms about it, and I talked about it and said, hey, this ain't gonna fly, and this is not going to work well in a modern environment. And when we go out there, it's fine if you want to do it, but we need some alternatives here now. And at that time there weren't a lot of alternatives, and so McGrew got up and defended the old guard and the heritage of the fonts, and he did a good job of it. And I championed, let's get something else going there, something modern. Fortunately, this situation is much better today. So we've got things like Pragmata Pro, which I consider one of the best general-purpose programming fonts around, and they have full, brilliant support for APL. And
what is Pragmatic Pro similar to? Because I know Zyma has the Paste website, and he has a number of fonts on that site. Deja Vu. I know that there's a few boxy ones that I don't remember the names of. Is it similar to one of those, or is this a different font that I need to see in order to understand why you like it?
You really got to see it to believe it, but it takes advantage of a lot of the modern features so that you get ligatures connected, so your math symbols all connect up together, and your arrow symbols all start to line up, and it has the ability to have extra wide but character aligned glyphs, so your arrows can be 2 characters wide and they still align. So it's a sort of mixed fixed width, and lots of features. The whole aesthetic is a little unique. Marshall, I think, gave a talk. I used to give his talks in dialogue in this font every once in a while. I've given some talks using this font. It's a little bit blocky, a little bit tall and skinny, it's a sans serif font. It has a little bit of a modern digital aesthetic, but it's a terrific font. It's really good, and I recommend it to anybody, except it's commercial.
Is that your favorite font?
No, but it is my favorite base font to default to if I'm going to need a code font for something.
Okay,
yeah.
so not favorite font. What is your go-to APL font of choice? And also, too, a follow-up question while the mic's in front of my mouth. How do we feel about the BQN 386, WeWa 386, APL, or actually it's APL 387 now that I think about it, because BQN 386 was the extension to APL 385, and I believe the new font that was, there was a vendor that was hired to improve some stuff. That's actually 387. So when we were saying APL 386, I think we actually meant APL 387. How do we feel about all the 86 plus across BQN, WeWa, and APL fonts versus what you're about to say is your favorite font? And maybe it's one of those. I don't know.
I have to say that they haven't caught my eye. And maybe that's intentional because they're supposed to maybe blend in and not feel too unique or offensive. I haven't been super impressed by them, but I haven't been offended by them. I've seen them, and they seem legit. So, sometimes that's exactly what you want. A little Helvetica in your life is not a bad thing, right? So I would say that's my feelings for them, and I haven't really tried or pushed them to their limits. So I can't speak with any grand authority on them. But as far as my favorite fonts, right?
And this is for APL because I have my favorite font, or actually list both.
It's hard because honestly, I don't think I found the ideal APL font yet. Pragmata Pro is probably as close as it gets for APL, but sometimes it's just not the right go. IBM has released a terrific font family, the Plex series, and Plex Mono and these others. They're also pretty good as a style, and they can generally support APL. They've got some work to do to fully gear it up, but they do really well. Stix as a mathematical font. If you want to render APL as a math font, Stix is pretty cool. I like that a lot, and it's a really good sort of scholarly academic publishing type of font. And you got to love Computer Modern a little bit,
I know that one.
That's Knuth's font that he uses for his books.
Okay, so it's very. I do know it because I've seen it.
Yeah. Everybody knows it. It can have some strong opinions, but I kind of like it. I like Knuth's general aesthetic with it. It's got a charm to it. So yeah.
All right. So how do we do this? Because we're passing the mic back and forth. So my guess is that this talk you haven't given it anywhere other than Minnowbrook, correct?
The fonts talk.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. I've complained at length internally at Dialogue, but nothing public.
All right, so I will, in the show notes, I'm just going to link to every font that was said, and you can go check them out for yourselves. My personal two favorites for APL and array languages is BQN 386, but honestly, I'm pretty sure Weewa is just an extension of that, and Tiny APL 386 is an extension of Weewa 386, so any of them work. And then for C++ or Python code, I switched to JetBrains Mono. I'm not sure if you ever tried that one out, but he grimaced a little bit, so he's not a huge fan. Although I think the Cursor and VS Code in the years past, they have ligatures. I'm not a huge ligature fan, but they do come with whatever settings I have set up. And as you say, they're not offensive enough that I go and turn them off. But anyways, that's the update. So this was 2017. Was that the only talk you gave back then? And then we'll get back to the comparison of years past versus 2025 Minnowbrook.
I think I gave one other talk, maybe one other two on. I think it was various parallel programming things and trying to talk about the state of APL in general and moving things forward. Things have changed a lot since then.
Okay.
But
and so how does Minnowbrook? I mean, we still have half a day left, but it's mostly over now, other than the evening session that will happen over the next few hours. How does Minnowbrook 2025 compare to 2017? And you said you've been a couple times before, or was that the only time?
First one, and then this is my second.
This is your second. So how do they compare? It's been a number of years, so.
Well, I think the number of different people is way higher. So we've got a much wider range of skill sets and people and experience and age ranges and just the whole vibe is a little younger. But ironically, that also means it's a little less classic party style, right? So in old school
You said this about the Iverson colleges as well. That favorite, I can't remember if it was the Barn one or it was the Italy one. I think it was anyways, it was one of them, and that the vibe is just a little bit different with different cast of characters.
Yeah. The tail end of the millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't party.
I mean, teetotaling is on the rise.
Yeah. They just don't do it. They go to bed, they exercise, and they get work done, and they don't hit the late night sessions as much as the old guard does.
Any other difference in terms of the talks, the vibe,
I think I actually want to highlight one thing that's not different, and that is Stanley Jordan gave terrific, engaging, dynamic, artistic presentations in both Minnowbrooks that I went to, and I loved both of them.
Yeah, for those that don't know, and I did not know before I first attended my first Minnowbrook 2 years ago, Stanley Jordan, 4-time Grammy nominee, jazz musician, link in the description to his Wikipedia page. It's quite phenomenal. He's incredibly talented and has like pioneered certain guitar techniques. We saw him play 2 different guitars at the same time tonight, each with a single hand, and uses APL to, I'm not sure if you necessarily say compose music, but basically to creatively explore different spaces.
Music production. Yeah, it's music production. Yeah. Audio engineer stuff.
It's wild. As Josh says, we just need Stanley to, get invited on to like Joe Rogan's podcast, and boom, APL is gonna like 10x in popularity. We were talking about virality earlier today, and like, is it gonna happen as Stanley gets invited on Joe's podcast and starts talking about APL and how it's the key to creativity? That's it, folks. That's it. Anyway, so slight differences. I mean, we'll pivot now to Co-dfns, folks. One of the highlights for me personally this conference the past couple days has been, for the first time ever, I downloaded Co-dfns. I did a git clone Co-dfns. It's a big repo, folks. I recommend you do a shallow or depth -- what's the command, Max? Filter, all right. Or ask AI. But anyways, and the Wi-Fi is not great here, so if you need to download a couple gigs of stuff, it's going to take a couple minutes. But we downloaded it. We used Claude 4. A little update, folks. I know 4.5 dropped a few days ago. Cursor does not work that well with 4.5. I still, Claude 4 Sonnet is still my daily driver. I imagine 4.5 is going to get a little bit better. Aaron's probably got some thoughts about the AIs. We'll let him say a little bit on that later. But before we get to his thoughts on AI, we got to give a little Co-dfns, not even update, because I've never talked about it personally. So this is what happened. Oh yeah, I tweeted about it. I mean, you're probably not on the socials anymore. I did at you. But what we did at first is we tried to get a row-wise softmax running in Co-dfns, and Co-dfns currently is on 5.7.1. After a number of backflips that I needed to do, you need to download Arrayfire, yada, yada, yada. AI did it for me. We got it working, and on a 100 by 100 matrix, so 100 rows, 100 columns, that's 10,000 items? 3.7 million kernels generated. I have a little tool called KP. It's a wrapper around NSYS for those of you familiar with the NVIDIA profiling tools. It should be 3. Yeah, I mean, PyTorch I think has 30, but they're not doing very well. The best technically is 1. TensorFlow and JAX, if you JIT, are actually able to recognize a row-wise softmax, and so they dispatch to a bespoke kernel, so they magically only do 1. Actually, in the case where you have 100 by 100, I think the IOTA, or the range, launches a separate kernel, so you end up with 2 kernels, but if you have a small enough matrix size, you end up with 1. 3.7 million, the word pathological does not capture how bad that is. But it turns out, I mean, I'll let Aaron color in the history of the transition from 4 to 5, that 5 is in flux right now. And so luckily Aaron was here. He helped me out. He pointed me at 4.1.3. There were some hiccups, and there was a select function in Arrayfire 3.9 that had some compatibility issue. But the fantastic news, folks, is yesterday, like 2 hours after I had this issue, Aaron pushed a release of Co-dfns 4.1.4, and now it's actually working pretty good. It's still not best in class. I think the softmax for a rank 1 array, I think, had 12 or 15 kernels. I actually can't remember exactly, but it's in the correct order of magnitude, 3.7 million. Anyway, so pretty exciting. If you are listening to this and you are interested in checking out Co-dfns, 1, use AI to get it set up, and 2, make sure you get 4.1.4. It's a release. You just have to do the git tag, get AI to do it. Anyways, I'm going to pass the mic over to Aaron now. You can tell us, what is the story behind Co-dfns 4 to 5? Why is 5 in a flux situation where it's able to generate, like, it's crazy. It ran for 6 minutes, and I thought it was broken. Turns out it's just doing something recursively. Anyways, I'm going to hand it off. But the good news is, link in the show notes, folks. 4.1.4 Co-dfns. It's pretty decent. It's still, we're gonna have to debug some stuff in terms of getting it to the optimal number of kernels. But over to Aaron. What's the story with 4 to 5? And thank you so much for pushing 4.1.4. And if you want to comment on Select and the fix, because it was a pretty crazy, simple fix. Over to you.
Yeah. So you technically the 4.1.4 fix in the source code is 1 character, and if you really do an image diff, it's like a few pixels because it was an I to an L, and then we pushed, and it fixes that.
What is I to L? What is that? What is that?
So that in the version 4, I is a signed integer and L is a signed 64, a long kind of thing, and ArrayFire changed that, and for some reason, and C++ and it's overloading. Have I said there's a reason we switched away from C++ in version 5? Now, of course, so where do we even begin with I know where we begin. If you do choose to use AI to do your stuff, you're welcome to do so. Talk to Conor. I think he's signed up to be official support for AI building for Co-dfns, whereas other people, of the ilk, Co-dfns is built around an interesting philosophy. It's out of vogue now, but it's called RTFM. And, I tend to think that if you read the installation manual and work through it, it actually goes pretty well. But all jokes aside.
I want to push back. Does the installation manual mention that basically if you're going to do profiling, that the 5.x version is not going to give you great results, and therefore you should use Co-dfns 4.x? I mean, admittedly, I didn't read the manual because the AI did it for me, so I don't know the answer to this question. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So I'm hoping that the answer is no, it doesn't mention it, and then I will be a little bit vindicated. But we're about to find out, folks.
So that kind of information is given in the release notes, not in the manual.
I see.
And we could maybe you have a good point to maybe put in the limitations that version 5 currently is pathologically idiotic about generating kernels. I think that would be legit. But usually that's the kind of stuff you find in the release notes, and we've known. Unfortunately, the sad truth is we've known about these problems for a while, but we just haven't been able to get to them yet.
Well, you've been working on static analysis.
Yeah, we've been working on getting static analyzers and other things. And actually, APL is an interesting language to compile, especially if you're trying to aim for a commercial market, a production, not just academic research or something like that, which Co-dfns, depending on who you talk to, is it actually a commercial product. It is meant to be used by people who want to actually get real work done. And in the APL world, that means that there are a lot of trade-offs in terms of where you put your focus and time for developing things. And you need to make sure that you have almost as much care put into the feature set running correctly without strange limitations as you do to getting the performance. So Co-dfns version 4 was always intended to sort of be a way of getting at some decent performance, reasonably low overhead on GPU-oriented code. So it was specifically designed to be only GPU, right? But we needed to transition to handling lots of different backends. We needed to we got to target Python and JavaScript and Rust and Java. We have all these other backend targets we need to target, and we need to have some way of making that whole maintenance burden make sense. And that meant that we really had to redesign the runtime system so that you wouldn't have to re-implement APL every single time you switched your backend. So we implemented a system that allowed us to have most of the runtime written in APL, but that comes at an interesting cost, which is that if you have too much abstractive overhead in your calling conventions or your primitives or other things like that, and if your APL code is not optimized for very specific use cases, you can generate pathologically high amounts of code. And if you take the shortcuts to get this sort of stuff, features working first and optimize later, you end up using terrible memory allocators and other things like that, and it becomes a giant slop fest when it gets to performance. So we had to get the architectures and the performance and the architecture and the features worked out first, and that was quite a bit of work to make sure that we get all of the features in a general purpose APL language sort of architected into the system. Now we are nearly full steam ahead on getting that performance worked out, and I'm hoping that the 3.7 million kernels will be a brief flash in the pan of the history of Co-dfns, but a bright flash it is.
So the key is, folks, it's RTFM, and that's read the insert expletive manual, and RTFRN, which is read the insert expletive release notes, which is why you should use AI, folks, because the AI I mean, actually, the AI didn't know to switch back to 4. I had to, I mean, luckily you're here at the conference. That was part of the reason I took this kind of initiative on. And also, too, if Trolls is listening or anybody working on the Futhark language, it is on my list of things to do because I read the CFAL paper. I think we mentioned it. We definitely mentioned it on Arraycast and linked to it, but I'll link to it in the show notes. There were a number of Array-esque libraries and languages that were profiled across a couple different problems. Futhark was one of them. DACE, which is a Python library, was one of them. Single Assignment C, aka SAC. Shout out to Sven Bodel-Scholz. We interviewed him on Arraycast. Obviously, Co-dfns. I think I'm missing one. Accelerate, which is a Haskell library, which I don't think is too actively developed these days, but still interesting to target. Anyways, we do plan to do these kind of profiling exercises in the future, and it's good to know. 5.7.x, or maybe it's going to be 5.8 or 9 or something. Hopefully it'll be fixed. Probably be 6. Oh, an upgrade. Tell us about the plans for 6 or will that just come when the the millions of kernel generation is fixed? Is there a roadmap, or is it TBD? But updates will come.
Yeah, the roadmap is the version 6 is going to have obscene amounts of support for all sorts of esoteric elements of APL in the parser. So we intend to have significant parser support for all or as much as we can of the legacy APL code. Even though we don't plan to compile that code, we are going to have that as part of the parser interface. So a lot of that is fresh and new in version 6, and we intend to have a drastically reduced performance overhead in version 6, which includes a new memory runtime manager, probably new kernels, new generations, ways of generating those kernels, all that kind of stuff. New implementations of our basic array fire mappings. Quite a bit of shifts, and it's enough of a drastic change that it needs a major version change.
6.0. All right. I mean, that's fantastic news, and honestly, Max here, who we're going to talk to in a little bit, he's got the Co-dfns Thesis Edition shirt on. I mean, that's mostly to the extent that I've interacted with Co-dfns. I mean, I've watched your talks on it. I've seen you peruse through the code. I mean, actually, here's a question. I do feel it's a little bit disingenuous that you put the APL code on a T-shirt, but behind that APL code, at least for the ArrayFire backend, like how many lines of code? Because of the .c files, which I didn't look at all of them. I looked at IoT.c, and I think I looked at RFD.c, or maybe it was RED.c. I looked at 2 or 3 of the ArrayFire. It's C code, correct? Yeah, C code. And but
ArrayFire is C and C++.
Okay, ArrayFire is C and C++, but there are tens, if not hundreds. I actually don't know how many individual files there are. All of that goes into the Co-dfns compiler. So tell us a little bit about the T-shirt and, what the reality of the actual number of lines of code written that has gone into this compiler ecosystem. Because, you see this and you're like, that's pretty impressive. And then it turns out that, boom, a little bit of C behind the scenes. And by a little bit, I think it's a lot of bit. Over to Aaron.
Yeah. So getting a fair estimate is kind of hard to compute. I can say right now the largest module that's doing the heaviest amount of work in the overall system for APL in particular is the parser. And the parser is sitting at somewhere around 650, maybe 670 lines in APL. Yeah, it's that. And that's a lot of stuff. So that includes things like the type inference, lexical scope resolution, and a bunch of interesting stuff. The Co-dfns T-shirt contains what we would call the core compiler. So typically you would divide your compiler into your parser, which may include a tokenizer, your code generator, and the thing in between that actually does the mapping between the AST that's parsed and your eventual output format. And that's the TT pass in the compiler, or the tree transformer pass, and that is still actually probably only about 200 and some lines. It's maybe 220 or something on the order of that. It's still remarkably small for what we need to do with it, and that includes things like doing the equivalent of like a register, graph coloring register allocator, and other things in that space. But the way the thesis edition was written, we've shifted to a model that has a one line phrase comment per compiler pass. So that adds a little bit of extra verbosity, but helps clarify a few things for some people. And we've added a bunch of more passes to handle more things. And the code generator now has to do a little bit more to be a little bit more generic across all the different backends or to handle that. We also shifted, the parser used to be a PEG parser. And now we've shifted to this pipeline of this data parallel parsing, this nano parsing approach, as we call it. And the code generator is also technically written in a heavyweight but still data parallel style. The C code that you see, in version 4, the mapping goes directly. We don't have any runtime infrastructure that's implemented separately from the file. So the Co-dfns version 4 spits out implementations of each primitive directly into your C file that it uses when it does the compilation, or C++ file in version 4's version. Those little snippets, I think they're written in a Whitney style, so counting lines is very...
For those that aren't familiar, Whitney refers to Arthur Whitney, the creator of all the Ks and a couple other A pluses and Bs and et ceteras. And a Whitney style means that if you were to take a Clang format and sick that on the C files that Aaron has written, they would go from the 10 to 20 lines that they are into like 100 lines, because imagine every brace, everything as much as you could put on a single line, delete new lines. It's very dense. If you've looked at the J source code or the J incunabulum, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, it is of that essence. Maybe not exactly the same, but very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. And so version 4 uses that style. And so we get, I think it's somewhere in the order of like 1,000 lines of code in that.
Across all the files?
Across all the files. Something in the 1,000-line range. Maybe it gets up to 2,000, but on the order of a lower end of thousands. The new system, the primitive, the prim.apln, which is the implementation of all the APL primitives, including some system functions and stuff like that, including your little, a couple of your combinators, like the star. I think we have the Starling Violet and the Dove is in there. Those are the lollipops.
Those are not in Dialog APL, correct?
No, but we added them as a little Conor Easter egg. So the runtime itself, the APL part of that runtime.
There's literally a comment that says Conor Easter eggs.
Yes.
Did you know about this?
Yes.
Yeah. So we put that in there just for you in the Iverson College a year or two ago. And so that APL file, that's probably around 1,000 lines, maybe, give or take. It's written in a style that's a little more verbose because it's kind of systemsy, but it's basically the same stuff. But it's not doing tree transforms or anything data parallel. That's the version 5 version of this, the primitive APLs. That also needs C code to support it, and that C code is not Whitney style. So that's being written as normal C code, and that's a few C files, and probably on the order of, I want to say, under 10,000, probably anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 as the total kernel cost right now. We're doing a little bit of a rewrite that might change up or down a couple of thousand once we're done with that rewrite, and that is the like basic core pieces necessary to support the C backend running. That C backend links against ArrayFire, and ArrayFire is a honky chonky beast, right? It does a lot of stuff. But
wait, so the IoT.c was not included in that 1,000 lines.
IoT.c was included in that 1,000 lines.
Oh, so those files, but
right.
So, but I thought that was ArrayFire code.
It is ArrayFire code, but the ArrayFire implementation, the actual distribution. I didn't write the ArrayFire code. That's a separate thing. Yeah. And there was some stuff that we did have in the compiler that we took out that is way more verbose and complex in ArrayFire. And if we decide to put it back in, so in particular our Fusion stuff. So we can do Fusion in a few lines. It's not too bad. That will, doing that on the ArrayFire side invokes the whole JIT system. That's a runtime JIT system on the ArrayFire side that does runtime kernel generation, all that stuff. That's a lot of code in the back end. And we're leveraging that right now because it's quite expedient to use that instead of managing our own kernel generation for specific cases. Now, it does mean sometimes we can get things like runaway kernel generation if we're not careful. But yeah, so that's sort of how the layout of everything goes. In summary, version 4 was probably 1,000 lines of Whitney-esque C. Version 5, the amount of C dedicated to the system is somewhere in the range of 5 to 7, maybe 8,000 lines of C code.
And so on Max's shirt here, what does this is from version 4? Is this from a prior version? Because we're looking at 20 lines of APL code. So what is this? 17 lines of APL. So what does this map to? Which version? And because I heard 200, I heard 600, I heard 1,000, I heard 5,000. At no point did I hear 17. So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so this is the T-shirt is called the Thesis Edition, and so when I was first working on this, I was doing my PhD, and if you've ever known a PhD is best done by focusing in on a very specific narrow topic and digging in deep and doing something novel in that region. So the 17 lines represent the core basic compiler passes that every dynamically typed programming language is going to have to do if it's sort of functionally oriented at some level. You're going to have lexical scope resolution, you're going to have to anchor variables, you're going to have to find slots, do basic, flattening and expression handling, things like that. All of that is in there, and the whole goal of this particular compiler, the Thesis Edition, the 17 lines, was to find the smallest set of compiler passes that was representative of general arbitrary tree manipulation, and to then do analysis on the costs of all of those passes relative to another programming language implementation of these same passes done in a different programming methodology in a different style. And so the stuff you see on the T-shirt is specifically the code that is discussed in my PhD thesis. And so it's equivalent roughly to about 1,000 lines of nanopass code in Shea Scheme. And if you go to the thesis, you'll see a re-implementation of those 17 lines in Shea Scheme nanopass, and then we benchmark against Racket and Shea Scheme in the thesis itself.
So did this ever correspond to anything in the Co-dfns versions? Was this a 1 or 2 or 3, or this was just, it lived in the thesis and then the actual production equivalent of this was more verbose? That's question 1. Question 2, what are these 3 spaces that seem kind of unnecessary, here. What's going on there? Is that like a printing issue, or is that actually how you're formatting stuff to indicate that this is an important thing that's about to happen?
Yeah, those spaces are the bane of my existence because they were not supposed to be in there. I don't know what happened. We may need to figure out because I noticed those on the recent editions that were being printed, and something is off. So it is under investigation, but no, we're not supposed to have those spaces there. So you can just turn a blind eye to that. But the code itself does actually represent a legitimate version of the Co-dfns compiler. This was the actual compiler that was in the Co-dfns at one point around 2019, around 2018 to 2019. This was the code that you would find in there, and I forget which version that specifically is because there's a lot of versions, but it's the complete TT pass that was in the compiler at that time.
I mean, what's the timestamp? Well, I mean, we're past the amount of time we said we keep Aaron here for, but we got one last question. So this was all, Co-dfns 4.1.4, and also, if you don't mind, pathological kernel generation or performance 5.7.1, or just wait till 6.0, and you'll have the best of all of the worlds, folks. We're going to wrap up the Co-dfns bundle here, and we're going to talk a little bit about AI, because Aaron and I have been going back and forth a little bit. If you are a listener of ADSP, you know that I am massively AI-pilled. And at one point we were asking Gemini and ChatGPT about the history of notebooks. It was not up to snuff for Aaron. And so his attitude remained kind of skeptical. But he did watch me successfully, to a certain extent, over the next day and a half or 2 days, basically not do anything and just constantly ask Claude 4. Admittedly, I was trying out Claude 4.5. And I think that made my experience worse. And it was a bad time to test out a new model because I don't typically do stuff with Dialog APL. And admittedly, Claude 4 and Claude 4.5 in general are actually, if you're inside of a repo like Co-dfns that has a lot of I/O code, it was successfully writing. And I should mention, I haven't mentioned up till now, I was using Dialog script. That is the way, if you're going to try and generate code with an LLM, make sure that you tell it, use the hashbang, user bin. I'm on Linux, so I believe it was user bin, dialog script. you can treat basically your APL code as if it is a text file. Typically, you have to go through RIDE or some workspace thing. Anyways, if you try to make it use the interpreter, it's a very awful experience. But the point being, it did quite well. It was generating valid code. It was just struggling with a couple things. But I don't want to speak for Aaron, but I do think that his attitude softened a little bit. I think at one point he did say, I do see that you are using it. He didn't say successfully, but he did say he said that he saw me using it. And anyways, I'll hand the mic over to Aaron. And the question is, what are let the people know what your, initial thoughts on AI are in general and how this weekend has affected or not affected your view of these technologies, because I think the people want to know.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth on AI for 3 years now or something like that. But
Have we?
I think so. Maybe 2 or 3. It's at least Iverson College and a little bit before that. I think I first heard about it on one of the podcasts. You mentioned how you were big on this AI stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, you sure?" And the next Iverson comes around, and you're like, "Oh man, it's great. I'm in it." You practically were dripping with who was it then? ChatGPT was all over you, and now I guess you've almost, I guess, officially married Claude. So
I wouldn't say that.
So what I did see you managing to get stuff running with your AI systems, and that I think is interesting. It's cool. It's something I think it is impressive in its own right. I think there's no denying that, right? Now,
let me just add the anguish on Aaron's face. Right, he's doing his best to politically say something quasi-positive. But I'll be honest, folks. Trying to get Co-dfns running, if you're using RIDE, which is typically the way that I use APL, it is not a simple. Yes, it is detailed in the user guide or manual or whatever it is. But, you're doing a link import. You have to make sure you're in the right file or in the right folder. I was in the wrong folder at one point, and I had to move something. I only knew that because I asked the AI. Maybe I didn't read the docs closely enough. But then you have to do a load, apostrophe, dot, apostrophe. And then the way it works is you have to write your APL code in a namespace file that then you pass to a co-dfns.fix or compilation command. And then once you do that, you have some kind of executable thing that you can run. Anyways, I don't even know the full details because my process now is that I just have a dialog script that Claude 4 knows very well that all you need to do is have 2 different files. You've got this script that with Co-dfns 4 will compile another namespace script, and I write all my code in that file, and then I run this script. Poof, everything works fantastically. But it's not a obvious or simple process. So even if maybe Aaron's thinking, yeah, but if you'd have just read the user guide top to bottom or the manual top to bottom, it would have been very clear. I'm a kind of guy that I just like to, bada bing, bada boom. Python, run the script, it works. As soon as there's an incantation that I have to type or spell or something, it's a little bit too much for me. And I'm sure a lot of the array listeners are being like, how is this guy like array languages? It's all about incantations. But anyways, my point being is that you saw it, but I don't think, and Sean Parent, one of my heroes, a lot of people's heroes, a good friend, we just had him on the pod. He talked about LLMs and AI as getting you into first gear. I had never experimented with Co-dfns because I think I had seen you in a talk once open up an interpreter, run a bunch of commands, and then compile another file, which then enables you to run something on the GPU. And when I'm used to an APL, just launching an interpreter, typing, and getting things running, that does seem a little bit daunting or overwhelming. But with AI now, I'm like, well, anything's possible. I'll just get it to do it, and then it's not a big deal. So I do think that there is something there. It's getting you into first gear in maybe a task that is actually quite simple if you just read the docs. But, us millennials and Gen Xers and alphas, we don't have the attention span to do all that reading. Anyways, we're back to Aaron, and I'm sure he's got lots of thoughts.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, Conor is the shining proof of my complaint against AI, which is that AI is almost the epitome of let somebody else do it so I don't have to learn anything. And that seems attractive, and I will admit there's a certain seductive transhumanist thing about that. However, I strongly believe that one of the core values, core ethics in humanity is the connection to past knowledge and the growth of knowledge inside of ourselves and the internalization of knowledge. I think that is a huge component to our ability to make good decisions. And even if we let AI do things for us, we need to be able to have good decisions, good taste, good understanding of the nature of our own decisions and the ramifications of that. And I don't think we can engage with reality as authentically if we don't know as much about reality. And AI systems are an extension of what we saw with things like Google Search, which I also thought as a great tool, but also potentially dangerous when you begin to rely on it to substitute your own internal knowledge. And I've seen that repeated over and over again, that if you don't internalize the knowledge, you fail to be able to have the insights at the higher levels that you need to step up beyond the average or beyond the norm. And so for me, I find that the LLMs don't provide the degree of deep internal knowledge that sits in my psyche that I can see and work and engage with. And so it hampers me because it actively represents an impediment to me getting that information in an efficient way. Now, I've had some very minor success using it as a search engine, but I often found that it doesn't really even give me good information or insights because, and I would argue that it also wouldn't necessarily give everybody good insights either if they had spent more time learning stuff.
All right, we've gone full philosophical, which is why I love chatting with Aaron. And I know, so we got to be careful here. We got to be explicit about what we're talking about, because a lot of what Aaron said, to a certain extent, I agree with. But the one thing I'm going to index on is that you said, using these AI tools enables you to not want to learn anything. And that is not true. I love learning. I love consuming podcasts and knowledge. I love algorithms. I love array languages. Bracket link.import octothorpe ws new line load in capital letters with I think a parentheses before it, apostrophe dot apostrophe, and then the Co-dfns thing. This is ceremony. This is stuff that I should not have to know. What I care about learning is fundamental performant implementations of algorithms. And that's why I love solving LeetCode, small problems where they are contained in array languages, because I don't need to worry about ceremony. I don't need to worry about the overhead of stuff. And I think this is the power of LLMs, is that when I want to get some scaffolding or some unit testing or some documentation or some UI framework that APL might not be good at, it does the stuff that I don't want to do. And that typing of that bracket link.import octothorpe ws, which is how you get started with Co-dfns, that's the thing that I'm not interested in. It's just I just want to one of the reasons that Python is so successful. You just launch it and boom, you're off to the races. Think about Java. That's we pick on Java, and Java 21's a little bit better because he gets rid of that boilerplate. But the hello world example was a public static void blah blah blah, 3 nested sets of braces, and then the print line was system.out.print ln paren something something. I don't fully remember. I haven't programmed in Java in a long time. But the point is people cherry pick on Java because you're just trying to say hello world. And then Python comes along and it goes print. Python 2 technically didn't have parens, but Python 3 had parens, and you're good to go, which is the same thing with APL and an interpreter. So I think there's a conflation here of that. I agree. The pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of algorithmic truth, I love all that stuff. But a lot of the time, programming is not that. Programming is overhead, it's scaffolding, it's stuff that I'm just I don't want to have to learn how to do this. And AI is liberating. And but there's some conflation here, and I'm sure you can pick apart some of the stuff I said. But when you said you don't want to learn anything, that's definitely not true. I love learning. There's just some things that I would prefer not to have to learn, and AI frees me from that. Back to Aaron, and I'm very excited to hear what he's going to say.
Yeah, first of all, I think you're absolutely right. The link import stuff is a ceremony. We want to get rid of it. The load stuff, absolute ceremony. Definitely want to get rid of it. The difference, though, is that I think while we should try to get rid of all the ceremony, I don't think we should try to prejudge the knowledge before it goes in. I think we should have a basis of seeking to learn that stuff, even the ceremony, and let it come in so that it enhances our understanding, enhances our overall experience, and we get better wider, broader perspectives, and then we can get rid of the ceremony. But I think you don't want to make that judgment before. You want to make that judgment after. After you've learned it, then you discard it.
After you learn it, then you discard it. I don't know. I feel like that kind of your sentiment there is like anti-APL. Like that's the reason I love APL. It's the absence of ceremony. Like, and that's why I love tacit programming, because tacit programming it's the purest form of no ceremony. Sometimes to a fault. Sometimes it's made things way too implicit, and the cognitive stuff that lives in your head. You want it to be, in the code, but I don't know. I mean, you want to learn it before you discard it. Personally, I feel, this is just off the top of the dome, folks. I haven't really reflected. Let me reflect, and we'll talk in a year or the next time we're at the same conference. But I feel like my first thought is like, I would rather someone else learn that ceremony and then realize that they should discard it. And then I just get the pleasant experience of never having to interact with that ceremony. I know that there's a bunch of core developers in the Python world, and they do all that stuff. And then I just have a super user, friendly, onboarding experience. And and this gets back to our whole power set conversation that I'm sure we've had on some podcast somewhere at some point about power set's too long. I just want a function that's called power set. But if you learn the primitives that you use to build up the power set function, it's what was it? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man a fish, feed him for life. It's that kind of thing. Learn how to implement power set, and you now have developed tools that are going to serve you, way more than just invoking a power set function. Yep. But I don't know. There's some line where, maybe power set is still on the line where you should learn the primitives, but some cryptographic hashing, maybe that's not even a good example, because probably you can do that in a few lines of APL. But, at some point, someone out there has some expertise and is going to deal with all that stuff, and I don't want to have to do it. But I know that you lean the opposite direction of that.
I agree. I with this general sentiment of relying on that kind of authority to build trust is an innately human thing. Like that's how we progress knowledge forward, right? Is each generation archives or preserves a certain type of knowledge and discards other knowledge that they've decided is no good. That's a very important thing of the human condition and how we engage with knowledge. I just think AI is a very bad authority for doing that.
That's fair. That's fair enough. We might find out in a couple years that just like social media was a big mistake. Big mistake. I'm going to cut in. I've been referencing that all weekend. I believe it's Pretty Woman. I could have my rom-coms mixed up.
Do you remember me? No, I'm sorry. I was in here yesterday. You wouldn't wait on me? Oh, you work on commission, right? Yes. Big mistake. Big. Huge. I have to go shopping now.
But big mistake. It could be a big mistake, social media, it's not all bad. But I think in 100 years when the historians are looking back, a lot of damage was done. I don't think anyone would disagree that a lot of damage to the youth has been done. Luckily, I think we both kind of missed it. Max, he seems like he's doing pretty well. But a lot of folks...
Have you seen it?
No, a lot of folks though that there's been some harm done, and actually, I think it's inevitable that there is going to be some harm done with LLMs and AI. The question is will it be like a net positive? And I don't know. I guess I'm in a certain position where I have the expertise because I started off my career and I'm 10 years plus into it, that I'm able to work with these tools, use it when it's working well, discard it when it's working bad. But yeah, maybe it's going to be a net negative long term because we're going to end up with these systems that no one knows how to fix because we forgot how to do stuff. And I don't think that you don't have your concern is valid. It's just a very exciting time for me. Yep. Because let's be honest, would I have, if AI didn't exist the way it exists today, would I have experimented with Co-dfns this weekend? That's the real question.
What is that whole thing about something of I am inconsistent for I contain multitudes? That whole.
Oh yeah, that's Walt Whitman. You probably, listener, are thinking, wow, what a cultured guy that Mr. Hoekstra is. No, I just happen to have watched a movie called The Life of Chuck, which I believe is a Hollywoodized version of a Stephen King novel. I'll be honest, folks, I didn't understand all of it. I was on a plane, I believe, either to Denmark or to Norway while I was watching it, and I was situated between two old ladies that were both very talkative, and they interrupted me many times while I was watching this movie to ask me how it was, and I was like, I'm pretty sure the overhead or over-ear headphones or send a very clear signal that I do not want to be interrupted right now. But anyways, they were lovely enough, just a little bit too interruptive. And they were like, what's it about? And I was like, halfway through the movie, I was like, I honestly don't know what this movie's about. Like Tom Hiddleston, a very good looking guy, he just danced. I don't know why. I guess his grandma liked to dance, but we don't know why. And I had to go to Wikipedia when I landed in whatever city I was going to. And then it made sense. And I do feel bad about not seeing what the movie was truly about. But in that movie, they quote Walt Whitman that says, within us contains multitudes, or that exact quote that you were saying, which is, it's a deep quote. How does that relate to AI? You brought that up. I went on a massive tangent, and now I've totally lost why you were bringing up the Whitman quote.
So you are a multitude, or at least binary, in the sense that you've embraced this AI experience, and yet you also embrace almost the polar opposite of a carefully crafted language that is designed to eliminate unnecessary computation, eliminate unnecessary fluff, and expose a certain type of artistic expression. And maybe you've got space for both of them in yourself.
Well, I mean, what's the time? We're almost. We'll spend 3 to 5 minutes left, and then we'll take a break. We'll come back and we'll interview Max a little bit later. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow morning, depending on if he wants to go to sleep, or we'll do it a little bit later because we need to take a break because it's been an hour. We were supposed to do this for like 20, 30 minutes, but I will say that there's like a existential, not crisis, but as someone that who was it today or was it yesterday that was presenting that there are craftsmen or people that care about the craft and then people that care about the outcome when it comes to coding. I think it was it Mark? I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out. Do you remember, Max? I can't remember. There was a presentation, though, where it was a very articulate point about that, do you care about the craft of writing code or do you care about the outcome? And there's it's too binary. And
Stefan's AI talk.
Oh, yes. It was Stefan Kruger, author of Learning APL, link in the show notes. He gave a talk about AI this morning and also was part of a panel about AI. And if you had asked me pre-LLMs, would 1,000% have told you I am the craftsman. I care so much about the beauty, the elegance, and not just about how it looks. 100%, 1,000%. Then LLM showed up. And I've increasingly been having the feeling that my favorite language now is the one that works best with LLMs. And I don't know how to, what's the word? Not rationalize, but like reconcile. Thank you. That with that, like every Monday I do go and I solve a couple, leak codey problems in BQN. And it's very enjoyable for me. Like I love the tacitness, especially when it's a good problem that's like perfect for the domain. It's a little dopamine hit. It's very nice. I still love that. But when it comes to building, especially personal software that's not going into production, it's for myself. I don't know. So it's like you said, yes, I contain multitudes. But it's a bit concerning because I feel like what my core identity was closer to. Is it fading? Is it I don't know. Like I still care about the beauty of algorithms and code, but at the same time, if I'm not the one writing it, like. I don't know. There's something there, though. It's just going to be the next 5 years of my life is trying to figure out, does it matter? Is it important? Anyways, what are your thoughts on everything I've just said? Because I know you're probably being like, yeah, you're dying. You're slowly dying. You're bowing down to the machine god, and you are dead inside now. Potentially something close to that.
Couldn't have said it better myself. No, I think meaning and purpose in life is a huge component of what we do, and I think just like there was difficulty in a transition to a factory worker mentality and the soul-sucking nature of that, I think there's a component of can you engage with meaning the work that you're doing? And for me, at least, besides the practical situation of like just being physically unable to get any good results out of AI, I'm just apparently terrible at talking to AI. But the other element of it is there's a deep meaning of engaging with with the work that you're doing and understanding it and knowing it and the experience of it. And I think the engagement with the problem, the participatory. I've been influenced in reading a book on epistemology, so I may be a little biased in that direction right now. I'm keyed in on this thing. So, I never pegged you for that. But there's we may have objective reality, subjective reality, and then there's a deep reality that's more human, that's the participatory reality that has to be experienced to be known. And I think maybe the act of coding, the act of communicating with others and with the machine is a whole component to that. And sometimes you want that language to be crisp and clean and neat, poetry or clear laws instead of excessive, verbose, difficult to follow laws, or a book that's well written. And the communication of that, I think there's something deeper there potentially. I think people maybe debase themselves a little bit too much by lowering their work to nothing more than grinding out a widget that may or may not achieve this thing. There's a deeper reason for that stuff, even if it is just helping somebody else out who is willing to pay money to get this service.
I mean, I will say I had this as now we're totally, off the deep end. I mean, maybe we were 30 minutes ago, nobody knows. But I did have a thought the other day, and we'll try and use this to wind down this conversation, which as always, you should have been here, folks, at Minnowbrook, because Aaron and I were contentiously are just back and forth about AI, and we were up till 3 a.m. last night talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about the
future of APL.
Yeah, the future of APL, and what is do we have a coherent message that we are, selling to the world? And anyway, so it's, but then we get on the mic, and I feel like it just, we both become more amenable, and it's just fantastic. But anyway, I had this random thought the other day that potentially, in 5-10 years or something, we do live in some post-AI society where, a certain amount of labor has been just, obsolesced, and we're all on some government welfare UBI program. And I did think that that doesn't sound all terrible. Probably it's not going to work out that well. But I thought, I still would want a program in I would probably build some kind of LeetCode-esque website. And I've actually always wanted to do this where, once a week, once a month, you release a problem, and it's kind of half code golfing across the languages, APL, BQN, J, WeWa, CAP. And then it's a comparison, you'll have the different, you click on the language, you see what the shortest ones are, but you also do some kind of profiling. And I do that already once a week, just on my own, and then I post it to the Pro Weekly Challenge. But the same way I enjoy playing, Scrabble, or I enjoy running, I also enjoy writing in code. And maybe that is the future of it is a pastime. It's not a tool that you use for solving problems. It is something you do for fun. Maybe that is. I'm not saying that that's how it should end up. I had the thought the other day, just we're living in a Wall-E world. A lot of people are just floating around on their little hover tubes, sipping their sodas. But then there's a small collection of folks that, they knew APL before the ending times. And so they're quite content, once a week. They wait for the 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, and the problem gets released, and then boom, for the next 6 hours, it's similar to the stories that we've heard. I think on a Raycast it has been told that, was it Pepe or one of the recent guests that we had talked about how across all the banks, in New York and UK, every once in a while there'd be a challenge sent out on some APL or Q or K mailing form, and then productivity stopped across the financial system for 30 minutes while everybody was solving this problem. Which one was it? Oh yeah, Gary Bergquist. It was 2 episodes ago. Link in the show notes. Maybe that is maybe that's the role that array languages will play in my life. It won't be for necessarily solving problems because the AI might be doing all of that. Maybe it'll just be for fun, for joy. You just mentioned poetry. People don't write poetry some people do it for employment, but mostly if you're a, employed poet, you write poetry because it's art, and then other people enjoy it. You're not doing it to, actually, I don't know. Maybe there are poets that churn out poems to make, I don't know. Yeah, Hallmark. Anyways, I'm going to let Aaron have the last word. Thoughts on everything I just said, your philosophy, and then also, too, I'm not sure if you've got plans for late 2025, early 2026 in terms of conferences, and if not, where people can reach you at, if you're on the socials or via email, or if it's just Co-dfns, you're no issues, but you can open a pull request. Anyways, I'll let Aaron have the final word of this fantastic conversation.
Thanks a bunch. It's been a lot of fun, and you can get a hold of me on my website, sacredeo.us, and my email at arcfight@sacredeo.us or aaron@dialogue.com. And I think APL is fun. I think it's a legitimate pastime, but I hope that we can also continue to use it to serve our fellow man and keep the human connection alive within the technological community.
I mean, there's nothing to say after that. I mean, I also hope that is the case, connection. These conferences, I was literally saying earlier today, is that, Max and I, who we'll be talking to in a few minutes after we take a short break, we live in the same city, actually quite close. Well, not anymore because I just moved, but previously we were like a kilometer away. But even though we were a kilometer away, we did meet up at APL meetups in the past, but we work remotely. It's conferences really are like the concentrated version of the social work experiment now that we all kind of work remotely. And that's why you should try to go to a conference, folks, whether it's Minnowbrook, whether it's Dialogue APL in 2026, whether it's Dyna, which just happened, so you can't go anymore, or it's some C++ or Haskell or whatever language you're in. Highly recommend. And yeah, we'll end it there. Thank you so much, Aaron. This has been an absolute blast. And we'll do this the next time we are at we did it. The last time we were in the same place was Iverson College.
Was it Eagle Pub?
It was Eagle Pub, yeah.
It was Eagle Pub. Yeah.
And now we're here in Minnowbrook. We might be back in 2 years' time, but we'll probably see each other before then. So until then, it's been a blast.
Thanks. Always is.